So how was that BMF fight for you? What your key? Uh, how do you
My big
guys
takeaway.
take away? Here you go. That's the word.
It it's insane how much it surprised me when they were walking to the cage and the crowd reaction inside Madison Square Garden was through the roof. How much I got these like almost like feels as if I was part of their teams, right? That they made it. Like this was so insane that this fight happened. That Dana White would reward these counterculture superstars who they were so real for so long that they had to fight the machine. They had to be anti-establishment for so long, and that they stuck so firm to who they were that eventually the machine came around and opened the door for them. Like, it's insane. It's inspiring in some weird way too. And the fact that UFC in 2019 would put a non-title bout in the main event between two badasses and just say, hey, go fight to the death in there. Let's be badasses. It's a throwback to what a lot of us, whether we'll admit it or not, was the reason we got into watching MMA and UFC. That just, damn, we're going to find out some answers right now in the most raw way possible. And I think for the 3 rounds that it lasted, and specifically that first round, it lived up or exceeded our expectations coming in, which is insane. I thought that the storyline build wasn't strong for this one in the end because you had 2 guys who were great at being the adversary against more of a baby face, if you will, if you're using pro wrestling terms. They're both sort of perfect, lovable villains, and they were refusing to sort of take out their wrath on each other. But they're so real that when that opening, horn sounded, you knew they were going to quote unquote fight to the death, which is really a bad terminology, but you get the meaning there. Masvidal just evolving into the level of confident striker that he is right now is insane, because this is the same guy 2 years ago in the same building. We watched Stephen Thompson just pick him apart, and he looked like he didn't belong there. So to know his emotional journey to get to this point and to see that his explosive striking worked and he was hurting Nate Diaz and dropped him, and then to see Nate just be a friggin' Diaz, bite down with his face falling apart and rally back and have these glimpses where you're like, if this fight goes 5, he's going to stop him. He's going to figure it out. Yes, it was anticlimactic to see the state of New York, which has built a quick reputation since MMA has been re-legalized there a few years ago, for being a interesting commission. I know a lot of the decisions they make are linked back to that heavyweight boxing tragic situation where Magomed Abdusalamov, the heavyweight boxer, went into the coma. They didn't get the right treatment. He didn't pass away, but he's still compromised from that. That with the lawsuits, they're being extra safe. Was it anticlimactic to see a BMF title fight end on a doctor stoppage? It certainly was, because you felt like Diaz, who was down on the cards, might have been coming on. But the more I looked at the replays of the eye, the cuts above and below, I mean, that was vicious.
Nasty. Yeah.
And do you remember after McGregor and Nate Diaz 2 at UFC 202? And that was one of the better fights in UFC history, right? 5-round war, on the feet the whole time, give and take. They both poured out the jug. Dana White said afterwards, I don't want to do a trilogy because, like, these guys are going to damage each other permanently. Like, these guys don't know how to take a step back. They're going to, give us the kind of fight that we dream of, the gaudy war of MMA. And it's weird. I'm watching this main event, this BMF thing. I'm so into the violence of it. They're giving us what we want. They're living out their own legacies and destinies and reputations in front of us. And I started to go, they might permanently hurt each other. Dana might not be wrong here. So it's anticlimactic, but it's going to set up a rematch, and it's going to be big money, and we're all going to care about it. And what I hope this rematch does is the hope I had from the beginning. Dana White came out and said, look, we're going to kowtow to you. We're going to make a $50,000 BMF title, but it's going to be a one-time only. Nate, you brought this into existence. We're going to have fun. The Rock is here. Everybody's great. We're going to say the F word a whole bunch of times on the air. We all love the BMF. Yay. But it's one time. It's a pro wrestling gimmick. And a lot of us are going, hey, dude, this is the entertainment business, right? You give title shots to people that don't deserve it all the damn time. Remember 46-year-old Dan Henderson a few years ago? CM Punk is always in the cage when he doesn't belong to be. Can we just have this title and just basically say, like, you got to be a savage to fight for it? You just agree on the weight and do it? They say no. I think 2 roads could emerge from this. One, that they go, look, the fans love the crap out of this. It's okay to have a fight that's built around just the fact that it's a fight. Like, let's do this thing. And then number 2, is it a coincidence that all these BMFers live between the lightweight and welterweight, in that gap where everybody wants a 165-pound division? I don't particularly want one, but I'm also sore as a boxing first guy who got into MMA. Love the fact that UFC does all the things that boxing doesn't do, right? All the bad things, boxing does, UFC tends to do the opposite. Now they're getting into more boxing type decisions with all the interim belts, with the creating of new divisions. I just want to see this thing be a thing, because do you know how much we love guys like Cowboy Cerrone, like Justin Gaethje, Mike Perry? These guys may F around and end up in a title fight eventually, but at the same time, they're there for the same thing that I think at least half of the audience is there for too. I mean, that Just Bleed guy from back in the day, there's a lot of people living in the U.S. who are smelling what that guy's cooking, and I think the BMF is the perfect sort of gift to the fans that I hope continues on. And I don't want to see Nate's face fall apart permanently. So in the end, I was actually okay with it. Kill me, take away my hardcore badge. I thought the doctors may have actually got it right.
So do you think this second, if the rematch happens, which seems like they're both talking about it, and I'm not sure if Masvidal was as confident about giving a rematch, but do you think it's going to be as much interest in the fight or less?
I actually think more, because I think it was odd when they had that first press conference to announce the fight, and UFC did it on the water in Manhattan and down near Brooklyn there. And it was like the best backdrop ever with the Brooklyn Bridge behind it. And we're like, oh my God, Masvidal and Diaz are here. Jorge's wearing the Scarface suit. This is the best thing ever. And then they did the press conference and nothing happened. And it was weird.
Nice to each other, yeah.
Yeah. And these bottom feeding journalists in the crowd were like, so Nate, are you getting high? And like, we're just like, bro, like, come on now. This gives you a narrative. The narrative is Nate kind of got screwed from the idea of what BMF is. They both are the realists. Jorge had an insanely great quote after the fight, which is like, I don't like this. I like my opponents to be unconscious. And while that might be jarring at first, if you think about it, like, I don't want fighters to think that way. I don't win unless I finish this guy. And it's great. It's great. It's a guaranteed blockbuster main event. I think it would have the same interest, if not more, because we got a sample size of how great this fight can be.